we do have a great lineup of folks to talk about, this, what I think of as sort of the second coming of blockchain, or blockchain 2.0. A few years ago, it was all the rage. You couldn't go to a music industry or any media industry conference without talking about blockchain. It then kind of fell off people's radar as the inevitable overhyping in the beginning failed to live up to its promises, and it became, for some, almost a dirty word. Even folks who were continuing to develop blockchain applications and to use blockchain stopped talking about it. But it is now seems to be coming back into fashion. I think we can attribute some of that to the NFT craze, but also, people have gotten a lot more sophisticated about what blockchain is, what it can do, and how it can be used. So with that, Seth, take it away, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, Paul. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Good?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So I am pinch hitting for Phil, but I'm happy to do it because blockchain and music is an area of particular interest to me. I think it's a huge opportunity in the long term. So I haven't had a chance to talk to these guys, but they have stellar backgrounds, and I'm sure we'll have a great conversation about it. I'll talk a little bit about my involvement with blockchain later, but why don't you guys just introduce yourselves? I guess you never know with Zoom what order anybody is seeing anybody else, so I can't say from left to right, but we'll just free for all it. If everybody could just introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their background, and then what attracted them to the blockchain space relative to music or any other area, metadata or anything else that you're focused on. Thanks.
So do you?
Yeah, sure. I'll call it off just to make it easier. Jordi.
Okay, sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much, Seth. Thank you so much to the summit for inviting me. It's great to be here, and especially sharing a panel with people with such backgrounds and that I admire. So thanks for that. And I'm Jordi Puy. I'm the CEO of Unison. Unison, we are a rights management entity, a new type of CMO that we created in Europe. We are based on the principles of technology efficiency and transparency through technology. And we manage rights now in more than 2 million musical works. We serve just above 300 clients from 12 countries. And what we do, it's what the traditional CMOs do, in the sense of we collect publishing rights, both mechanical and public performance, on behalf of our clients, and then we pay it to our clients. But the difference is the systems that we use, and that we are a private for-profit company, which in the US, you've had it for decades. It was possible for private companies to do our job, but not in Europe, or in most of the countries of Europe. It was not allowed, but we had a legislation change that allowed us to exist. And said that as an intro, the way we came across blockchain was when we founded Unison, which was late 2016, early 2017, that we, with our background in publishing and managing copyrights from a publishing perspective and in our industry expertise, we had experienced a lot of the inefficiencies of the sector that we were going in, the rights management sector, the CMO sector. And we gathered with many experts in the industry. We invited CEOs of big independent publishing companies. We invited board members of traditional CMOs to try to identify the pain points of our sector, and then worked with IBM as well to identify what technologies were out there that could help us to solve those problems that we've had identified. And one of them, the famous black boxes problem, that relates to the capacity to identify who are the owners of a particular musical work in a moment in time in order to know who needs to be paid. That's when we came across blockchain as a potential great solution that could offer a decentralized database that would be used by many or several or a few industry players, but that we would agree what is the truth, and that less and less organizations in the world could say that they could not pay a certain amount of money because they did not know who owned a particular musical work. And that's how we came across that. And I don't want to extend myself right now more on that, just as an intro, and then yeah, we can go more in depth on how we use it and for what and with whom.
Well, yeah, no, that's great. That's a ton of material to cover. Thank you, Stefan, if you would.
Yes, hello. So Stefan, my name is Stefan, not not Jordi, obviously. Thank you very much also for having me here. It's absolutely great to be around, you know, like-minded and industry guys. You know, it's a pleasure always. I'm the CEO of Bitfury Surround, which has started as a subsidiary of a large mining company, and my background is actually, you know, mainly about rights monetization, IP monetization in larger environments. I was the chief digital at Universal Music and Polygram, and then Vivendi at later stage, working in this IP space and how to monetize IP across technology, you know, all different kinds of technologies. I'm always trying to figure out what is the appropriate value for the piece that, you know, that is basically out there when it turns into, or when it is confronted with the data economy. And in the most recent years, across all different networks, mobile networks, you know, fixed line and other things. And so the idea to do Surround basically came, you know, to mind when we were thinking about how to look at, you know, let's say a platform that would be able to, in an open way, aggregate data from all different sources, but, you know, with the intention to give the artist, the creator, and, you know, also labels and publishers and other, individuals that are involved into the lifetime value optimization of the IP assets, an authoritative but also aggregated view across jurisdictions, across you know, territories, across channels, across like all different kinds of usage scenarios. You know, and this idea came, you know, into our minds because we were seeing that the value gap was just really increasing heavily. So that means that, you know, in order to grasp what is the value universe almost between the data economy and us as a music IP industry, we were basically trying to bring up an open platform that would be compatible with also all different kinds of technology. And
good. Interesting
technology to be a component. For me, it's like one of the things where this component was very interesting, and we saw the capabilities of a company like Bitfury to drive large numbers, huge, you know, amounts of transactions, you know, that are needed for our sector, and this is why we kind of connected to them, and yeah, and we are planning, like after COVID now, to launch early next year, and we, you know, we're working with you know, like a pre-market prototype that is already live, and you know, that hopefully I can share very soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan, if you would.
Yeah, hi, I'm Alan. I'm a co-founder, or one of the co-founders and chief strategy officer of Verifi Media, formerly known as .blockchain Media, formerly known as .blockchain Music. I have a 20+ year career as a music and technology lawyer, and I came across blockchain when I was doing some research work with Berklee College of Music and MIT that ultimately led to the Berkeley development of the Open Music Initiative. But In 2015, we started looking at Bitcoin and enterprise blockchain and the technology to see if it could solve a lot of the black box issues that exist, the data management issues that exist. And then I came together in 2016 to form Blockchain at the time, now Verifi Media, with 4 other kind of music industry executives. And our focus is really on connecting all parts of the digital music supply chain and answering the question, who owns the rights to this media? So we work with CMOs and PROs, including Jordi. We work with major labels, distributors, publishers, with the idea that blockchain can help to, or that our technology can help to facilitate communication between all of those parties, and blockchain is really a piece of what we do. It is not the core technology behind what we do, but it is definitely a piece of what we do. And I think it was interesting to hear Paul talk a little bit about how this has evolved over the past 5 or 6 years, because I know Bruno is not here today, but I remember being on a panel with Bruno at MIDEM about blockchain in 2016. And here we are both still talking about it. And I think Paul was exactly right when he said that, NFTs have brought a lot of attention back to blockchain, but I also think that people have become a lot more sophisticated around it. Certainly the questions and the conversations that we're having as a company today are, with people who are a lot more knowledgeable and understanding of what the technology can do than what you saw 5 years ago, pre the first, I guess, crypto hype of 2017 and everything else. So anyway, I'm happy to be here. And again, to echo Jordi and Stefan's comments, thanks for having me.
Excellent. So I think that Alan set the table for this really well. In the time we have, probably there are 2 big things we can dig into. One is the actual opportunities presented by blockchain tech relative to music. And then because we've actually got some other, in addition to the panel, we've got some music industry OGs like Todd and Dick out there. For those of us who've worked in the music business, I think the really fascinating thing, just as fascinating as the opportunities that the tech presents, is what's the response of the industry and where are the best opportunities to actually get traction and how that's changed. And so I'm going to set the table a little bit and then shut up, and maybe we can dig in on that stuff. But I had a conversation last week and trying to explain why I think this topic is, it's a when, not an if. And it feels to me very much the way that broadband did in 93, 94, 95, 96. For those of us working in the studio system who told television and feature rights holders that the internet, the browser and games and the internet were actually going to change the delivery of entertainment content, which, most of them for a long time. And so in some ways, maybe that's analogous to what we lived through in 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 into the ICO rage boom. But when you think about the inefficiencies in that business, in the video business, it was sort of inevitable that had to happen. And I'm wondering if you guys have a feeling about that. There's always people who aren't going to want to give up the legacy systems, but where are the real efficiencies that you guys see in terms of metadata or rights management? That would be the first question. What are some like tangible use cases for the tech in real world? And I think you can assume that the folks listening to this, because I've looked through the list, a lot of them are pretty conversant with the general business practices of the music business. What are some real opportunities here? And then maybe we can talk a little bit about how the industry itself, whether it's labels or managers or artists, are dealing with it. Yeah, and I'll just throw it open to everybody, whoever wants to take it. I think I see Stefan smiling. You want to go first?
I'm just trying to see where we can start, because to be quite honest, there is obviously several areas here in which really give us a very, very good entry point. We've been talking about data consistency, administrative efficiencies, and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, sorry.
No, I was going to say, so we've got, I think, Jordi, we talked about rights management, we talked about metadata, but I think if we can unpack 1 or 2 of these in the time that we have, whichever you guys are most passionate, let's do those.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so I'm more the monetization guy. So I would probably say that, you know, going for like a self-determined, you know, individual licensing scheme, something that is really like kind of turning the you know, bringing like a turnaround in the licensing, the way that APIs work. I think this is one of the big ones, because with the arrival of NFTs, even though it's still very early and it's not really you know, it's not very well coordinated, and the value, you know, like the margins and all this kind of stuff is still, you know, it still needs to be optimized in order to give it really like this mass market push, and also at the, you know, at the benefit of the artist. But parallel, I think the second big area where I believe that there is going to be a huge shift is going to be on the financial markets. Whenever the IP asset itself hits, you know, let's say that the you know, the capital access, or is integrated, or let's say is intertwined with the capital markets. This was like years ago only possible if Michael Jackson or anybody would like create like, let's say, an opportunity for a big investor to come in with like 2 billion on 10% of their catalogs, but you could do that individually on every single piece of asset. You know, rate the asset, make it liquid, and you know, allow all different kinds of wallet and financial services. I think this is going to give a big boost to the individual creator, but also to anybody involved with this creation. So I would personally say I'm very excited about how the licensing market is going to develop. You know, much broader and bigger than this NFT thing that we started with right now. And then secondly, you know, about all the financial services that are going to be available to the creators that were in the beginning really just like the victim of all this financial play. And all of a sudden, especially in very, very low interest environments like in Europe, where interest is zero, why would I even wait 1 second to get my money? It doesn't even make any sense. And why would I even pay, why would I refrain from, you know, like 85 or 75% of my margin just by, you know what I mean? It's like, this is the low hanging fruit to open those pockets there and to free the economic situation for the artists, in my opinion, with this technology.
Excellent. Alan?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the things that Stefan just mentioned are very accurate. I mean, I think that a lot of the capital markets access and things that are happening there can all be supported by blockchain technology. I think that, you know, from our perspective at Verifi, we feel like we need to have, or there needs to be accurate rights data that can support those assets that are being monetized in the capital markets. And so that's what we're really focused on. And, you know, blockchain for us does a couple of things. Again, it's not a core technology for us, but it is a strong part of what we're doing. And it allows us to, you know, write changes and track in an immutable ledger who has claimed a particular asset over time, perhaps support the capital markets by actually being able to provide some kind of common truth around the fact that the asset that you're monetizing actually is the asset that you want to be monetizing. And so, you know, I think that again, for us, it's, you've got to get the rights data to be accurate in order to support those monetization transactions that Stefan's talking about, and we view blockchain as a piece of that.
Excellent. Jordi?
Yeah, sure. I mean, from the rights management perspective, which is where our expertise or our area of work, because we are not a blockchain company. We are blockchain users through actually our partnership with Verifi, and we identify blockchain as an opportunity, as I said, to try to improve the way we could identify with the owner of a particular musical work in a moment in time. And we concentrated on that because when we studied the possibilities of blockchain, cryptocurrencies, smart contracts, all these other layers, you know, we are a rights management entity. and most of us are lawyers, so we know about regulation, and we know that regulation, it's always late, but it always arrives, and that makes us very wary. And this applies to the NFTs as well. I was reading just yesterday what I thought it was a really good article about the legal implications of NFTs that came out in music business worldwide. But anyway, we saw the cryptos and we see the NFTs right now, like yet to be mature enough in terms of regulation to be reliable from a legal perspective, and capital markets and securitization of all of those assets. It's also something that that has heavy regulation on top of it. But we think that there's a huge opportunity still. It's just the starting point of using blockchain to identify ownership of works on a really wide scale in the industry. This has not happened yet. I mean, we fully support Verifi's work, and we joined as clients, and we believed in the project since the very beginning, because they were concentrating on that particular issue, which is who is the owner, and how we can use shared ledgers that are extremely secure to share this minimum viable data of ownership between different players. And first we thought that it needed to be all the industry. Now we don't think that it has to be all the industry, because we realized that if you have some players, let's say one of the music users, a DSP, you have some CMOs, you have some big publishers that actually agree to share certain amount of data of ownership. This will make all our lives much easier. And this will allow us to move forward as an industry in a different way, because there was going to be more money to be made on the table, under the table, as Benji used to say, Benji Rogers, like in 2016, right? And that's I think a huge opportunity that we've not yet got to as an industry and as a sector, and it's the simplest one, because it does not involve all this sophistication that we were talking about. It does not require regulation. It's just about us, the industry, sharing certain amounts of data in a reliable technological manner that gives the security to the right holders that they are getting the money that they should be getting for the usage of their intellectual property.
Yes, so going off of that's really interesting. As you're talking, I was thinking about most of the sort of examples that we think about in music of new business models driven by technology, really loosely defined. And I guess one of the most recent ones was Blau's stuff, and NFTs generated a lot of press, obviously. Everybody goes back I guess if you want to talk about fintech, everybody still talks about Bowie bonds. Radiohead obviously have done a whole bunch of things. There's a lot of examples. They generally seem to come from artists. And so if there's an analog to how an industry changes, I mean, on the video side, right, it was largely driven by public markets or appeal to public markets. So we could talk for a long time about what it took Netflix to go from an outlier to a market dominant position, and then why Disney had to do what it did and the rest of Hollywood has to sort of pivot. But do you guys have any general thoughts about how we start to see this stuff? I mean, I agree, NFTs are super interesting. First of all, it means a lot. Just the term NFT means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It's pretty fuzzy, but where do you guys see the openings for some of these real opportunities to sort of get traction? I mean, do PROs have an interest in doing it? Do labels have an interest in doing it? Managers, agents? Where do you guys see some of the places that these things can break through?
I mean, normally you would I mean, all the technologies that I've been observing in 25 years, digital entertainment, were basically driven by consumer interest, right? And this is kind of difficult at the stage we are in, but at the same time, there's also a huge opportunity, because the current, let's say, business model around streaming is really pretty simple, right? And it's not good for the individual, right? Because it's just by nature, everybody's diluting. So there is a big entry point from the consumer side. If there is, I think, a way that this retail domination, which the labels hate, everybody hates really for the moment, and then being like trapped in this big cluster of everything is the same. That is probably one big entry point, and therefore the consumer experience obviously needs to be worked on. So we've been recently working with Flow, as some of the Bitfury people have been involved with that. And it's the way that, this games normally, the whole gamification thing is normally like kickstarting these developments, right? That's been working quite well, but at the same time, the economics behind are, still very, very, very difficult from a creator and from a content provider perspective, right? So I think this is, they're very, very. I would say that they're still humongous jobs to be done in terms of like how the technology scales across, let's say, almost across chains, because that's the way it is. You don't have a specific chain scenario from a usage perspective, or from an artist perspective. The artist ideally doesn't care if it's like on Flow, or if it's on Spotify, or if it's on OpenSea or whatnot, right? So I think when this comes into a pretty simple, easy to scale, low cost environment like the SMS in the old days for ringtones, that's when the hockey stick kicks in. And for the moment, everybody's kind of like really confused where this environment and how this environment is going to come about, right? So some of our guys are working on this, basically on the scaling solutions on Ethereum, for example. There's like the question on when does the Lightning Network really kick in and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things happening there that are needed, especially in a low price licensing environment, which is by nature, you need to have minimum cost in order to scale anything, and in order to create user experiences and give somebody really a part of the value chain, or let's say that is worthwhile, right? So I think there is in the inner, architecture, technology, the way that it is harmonized and it can be used across all the different networks and chains. I think that's still one of the major challenges for the market to really, really, really take off in a sustainable way, I think.
Alan or Jordi, you have any?
I think if we're, I echo Stefan's comments, particularly with NFTs. I think that, we've seen a lot of hype and interest in NFTs, but I think that that as a product is going to just have to develop more, much as, blockchain as a whole needs to continue to develop. We saw the crypto hype in 2017. I think now we've seen the NFT hype of 2021. But I do think that if, you have creators who see the opportunity to monetize upon the resale of NFTs, that's pretty interesting for a creator. I think for fan engagement and combining, NFT media ownership online with offline experiences can also create an interesting scenario for creators. And so I think that consumer-driven adoption, at least on the NFT side, still has a ways to go, and I think there are ways that we get there.
I totally agree with that, and especially Alan, when you look at different ways of using NFTs, as you were saying, because one thing it's talking about future revenues generated by copyrights, and then you're selling features, and then things get really, really complicated legally. But what you're doing is you're just like selling certain types of assets that you have, which might be a creation, might be something like that. I think that's a great opportunity for the creators to find new ways of monetization, but not necessarily to be immediately applied to rights management, which then it becomes really complex to structure legally.
Yeah, somebody's making a note that Q&A is coming up. Paul Z, if you want to, you had a great statement there. If you want to reformulate that as a question, maybe we can address that. But in the meantime, fractional ownership, there have been a number of blockchain you know, ICOs and other blockchain plays at doing fractional ownership of either performances or copyrights. It seems like the kind of thing on its face that the blockchain could facilitate, but I guess your point, Jordi and others, is, you know, it's not, none of this stuff is actually so easy, and then it has to scale. I mean, how do you guys feel from, I guess this is mainly a Stefan question. You're talking about, and when you talk about flow, I assume you mean Dapper Flow, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so for those of you, so Flow is the blockchain created and managed by Dapper Labs, which is the company that most famously runs NBA Top Shot, and then CryptoKitties before there. So, you know, Flow at this point is sort of living in its own world, as opposed to what you're talking about with Ethereum, which is still, for all the gas fee problems and other economic issues, is still the 800-pound gorilla. And many other chains are obviously EVM compatible, like Polygon and Flow. Like, are there, how do you feel, Stefan, as the guy who's deep into this, the blockchain industry as a whole is evolving in terms of the need for this to actually answer these kind of business cases? Do you think we're a quarter way there, or a halfway there, or 75% there?
I would say we're probably a quarter there, if at all, because I now see that everybody's really getting involved building these bridges to get liquidity out without these gas fees and all this kind of stuff. So this is where a lot of focus is on there. There's huge, you know, some of my friends, they got like huge funding, like literally only for one or two, people, companies, because there's so much need, and they have been absorbing. Like one of the companies that I know, they were absorbing about 2 billion in revenues in just a few days, because there's so much pressure on this in this EVM environment right now, and how to get the liquidity in and out and in and out all the time in real time at low cost, right? So I think this is one of the things. The standard is pretty much really probably the EVM standard right now, in the sense that you have the highest probability in gathering really a large sum, adoption areas, obviously, due to the history of the chain and of all the chains around them, and all the services that are using Ethereum. But then at the same time, you have this, these great developments all over the place that are basically looking at the next generation of this, app store, computer kind of environment, and that's been working fantastic also for like Elrond and all these guys. So I think it's just going to blow up, and I couldn't imagine that we are more than 25% there right now, because you also have to see the purpose on where you're building on what, for whom. And if you remember the history of Ethereum, lots of the stuff was really built in order to raise capital. And that now everybody's like, okay, so now the capital is there, so what are we going to do? And I think when there is this bottleneck gone of the gas fees, and you have Polkadot and all these guys and Polygon, everybody like flourish, then I think this is going to go crazy. So for all these reasons, I think 25% is probably even it's already a positive guess. I mean, like a good guess. Could be even less.
Yeah, Steve here is making an interesting point. There's still a big difference between crypto investors and the fiat investors. No one took 69 million out of a stock portfolio to buy Beeple. It all came from crypto profits. I think that's a really smart point, especially related to the NFT space, because such a disparate, especially now, like we had that momentary blip, but I mean, Bored Apes and all the stuff that's selling now in the NFT space, that's crypto people to crypto people. That's not a mass market thing. I mean, how important do any of you think I mean, I'll just go to one that feels really important to me. I mean, credit card integration and integration with traditional financial systems. I mean, the crypto, trader is still a pretty small market relative to what we all think of, right? If we're talking about the music business. How are you guys feeling about what has to happen in order for people to be able to buy with their credit cards, or, avoid MetaMask, which I think we can all agree is not something that a 17-year-old, fan is necessarily going to want to do? Anybody? How is the UX experience of buying something with crypto? How much does that limit the market so far?
I think there's limitations there. I think also that, you just need to see the various marketplaces and exchanges kind of maturing and dealing with all the increased regulation. And, you saw Coinbase is trying to issue or get into the banking business, and now they're being regulated on interest-bearing savings accounts. And so I think that, and that's obviously the on-ramp for kind of the retail folks that are getting involved in crypto. And so I just think that, a lot of those pieces need to be worked out, and the regulation and the regulatory environment needs to become more stable.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the big one we're living through now, and I guess it's different. You guys, it's a pretty international panel. The regulatory stuff is a little bit different in different countries, but here in the States in particular, it's pretty tough. And Coinbase facing the SEC probably doesn't help any studio, any label's perspective on this stuff. I mean, on the other hand, if the digital yuan actually, comes soon, it will come eventually. More and more digital currencies will come from nation states. You guys have any thoughts about the timeline on when this sort of, it's crypto, it's a shadow economy, when that stuff begins to subside, and how that affects all of this?
It depends so much on the individual governments and how they deal with it. I mean, we have a huge issue in Germany, as you can imagine, because we are so conservative with regards to this, but at the same time, we're losing out on so much traction in the way that the markets develop. That's a big problem in Germany, because we're like we should go, we cannot go, we should go, we cannot go. And obviously, as I was reading this comment here, so if you are like above 17, by the way, you first of all have to be 18 in order to deal with it.
Yeah, I actually put that wrong. Steve's right. I meant the opposite. I meant if you're not 17, using that as well. If you're over 40 or whatever. Yeah, it's it's not for everybody.
So it's really like for especially like people that are a little bit more conservative or older by nature, because they have achieved something, they want to put their money somewhere, that still struggle a lot in Germany. And then when you don't know how the regulators work with this, is it now 40% tax, or is it no tax, or is it this, or is it all these things are unclear. And then on top of that, it's still, in my opinion, it's still not that easy to get it all set up, right? Even though you have some nice user interfaces now, there's still some steps that are normally. I mean, I used to work a lot on the consumer side with Vivendi when we were doing like the pan-European Netflix and stuff like that. It was all in the fight with Amazon and these guys. It's all about how to get everything with one click. And this is really what you need in order to go like 10x. Now going 10x even on a Binance wallet is not so easy. So there is a lot of stuff, and then you read about it in the news, and you have to be careful. And so I think there is still a lot of friction in this process. And when it comes, or when it is, let's say, linked to your personal income, and you might see an opportunity to grow like financially, and you probably even you're probably even a little bit more risk averse. I don't know, but that's my feeling, is that it's only like the real geeks and the real kids. They are like very fast and very quick, but a large chunk of the audience that we are talking about, that enjoy music, that enjoy to pay also for content and stuff like that, that's probably still locked out for the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. So before Ned calls time, we maybe have time for one question from you guys. I see a lot of statements. I don't see any questions yet. But before we get, while we wait for,
I can see, sorry, Seth, I can see a couple of questions. Maybe they were directed to me directly, and you cannot see them in the Q&A.
Take it. Bring us on.
There's one from Herman Rodriguez Bajan that says, Mr. Puy, doesn't the metadata of all the repertoire have to be corrected by the guardians of the info, which is often incorrect? How can blockchain possibly match and fix that with often wrong info. And well, there are like many technologies that are helping to try to solve this problem. And probably the question is directed to me, but probably Alan can give you more tips, because they partner up with machine learning technologies that help to enrich the metadata and correct and find the closest to the truth information that they can gather by comparing a lot of databases and doing it in a technology manner, right, Alan? Is that?
Yeah, and I think, you know, the question that he's raised here around it needing to be corrected by the guardians, I mean, in a lot of cases, the guardians of the data, of which there are multiple parties, it doesn't always match. And so there's also reconciliation that needs to take place between those parties. And, you know, also just to answer the question from Janos, we're not focused in our services with putting all of the data on the blockchain, because we know that's not a scalable solution. What we're focused on doing is writing changes to or kind of managing changes to the metadata and stamping those on the blockchain instead, so that we basically have a change ledger instead of trying to put all of the asset metadata on the blockchain.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well on the question, because about you don't need to put all the single sort of usages of a musical work, and just by having these changes of ownership registered there that are not billions per second or like much then this is already super helpful, and it's actually doable.
Cool. Did any of the three of you get any other questions that were not addressed to everybody? Nope.
Well, okay. I have another one about Unison,
good.
But let's say, does Unison have royalties which are not accounted for via black boxes? And the answer is that no, we are a claim-based society, and we don't have these such situations. And that's because the blanket licensing, it's getting to an end, we believe, with fraction licensing being the norm now in many parts of the world, especially in Europe. You cannot claim, or it's very difficult now for anyone to claim that they own 100% of a particular repertoire, because there are so many right holders that can claim rights on one particular song, and we find it every day. And now anyone that claims that they control 100% of a national repertoire or something like that, to be honest, I think it's almost impossible that this happens, except in maybe in a few countries in the world. So yeah, the answer is that not, and it's because of that.
Is that a wrap?
I think that's it.
I think that's
right
a wrap.
Thank you, everybody. Alan, Stefan, Jordi, Seth, and Seth, particularly you jumping in and grabbing the reins at the last moment. We really appreciate it. Yeah. So,
thanks,
Paul,
guys.
Final thoughts for the day?
I'm tired. Thank you all. That was a great panel. And I want to thank all of our terrific speakers. I found this to be a very fascinating and enriching set of conversations. And I want to give special thanks to our sponsors, Orfium and Exactuals. We couldn't do these things without our sponsors. And we will see you all at DO, I hope, Digital Entertainment World in February, which is probably going to also still be online, although stay tuned. We'll be monitoring the situation. I should also point out that we have Future of Television forum November 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. And there's information at televisionconference.com.
And we'll also be doing Let's Do Lunch segments during select days throughout the week between now and November. So thanks again to everybody. Paul, fantastic job. And again, thanks to the panel. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.